Greetings and good Tuesday morning, the 18th of April, 2023. Still the third decade of the 21st century. I always open with that if you're new to my channel because I just kind of like to highlight the fact that it is indeed the third decade of the 21st century, as if to say, hey, what sort of things are we talking about? What's popular in the zeitgeist and that sort of thing. But if you're also new to my channel, one thing I love to do is read, react, and respond to comments left on my channel. So without further ado, my one loyal viewer, and when I say loyal, I mean the one who does take the time to respond, Stace. The first comment I got to get back to was from the April 6th, 2023 video. Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man is a YouTube series by Emmanuel Acho, A-C-H-O, Acho maybe, and also the title of one of his books. I have also lived in New Mexico and Arizona. Good news, the Winchesters are on HBO Max, so I can start the series. Haven't started either Walker series. Okay, so part of my channel is a little socio-political, and then the other part of my channel is geeky, nerdy stuff. Stace, I sincerely hope I didn't spoil anything, or at least when I said there might be a spoiler, you stopped the video. Hopefully I didn't spoil anything, or maybe you're not really one to care too much about that. I know you haven't completed Supernatural, so some things may not make sense to you, or they might, I don't know. If you watched one of my videos about the season finale of the Winchesters, it'll make way more sense. I suspected it. I had no idea. They were somehow able to keep that very hush-hush. It's enjoyable. It's not the same Supernatural for many different reasons, and if you want to carry on that conversation in a different video, let me know. I would so love to do that. Where am I at right now in regards to that Conversations with a Black Man? I've been researching 3D printers a lot right now because I've been having a tremendous amount of difficulty with my my crafting abilities when it comes to cosplay, especially the Mandalorian costuming. So I've been researching 3D printing a lot. Frankly Built is one guy that I've been watching a lot, so I haven't gotten around to that, just like I haven't gotten around to your book, which is really my fault. There's no reason. I should be able to, if it's on Barnes & Nobles, I should be able to download it to my Nook and then read that. But I do want to support you, so I do want to read your book. The other problem is I have CRS, and this goes for anybody else on my channel. I have thoughts, I have ideas, and they're very good, and I script them in my head, and then I'll go and do something else, and then I've totally forgotten. I can't remember what it was or the sequence I want to talk about. My channel is raw, and there's pros and cons to that. I can see the value in scripting and preparing and sketching and all that. It would make things a little bit more coherent. You can have facts, like Steven Crowder's really good at providing facts. I've tried it once, and in all reality, there's probably no reason why I couldn't, because lately I've had such a delay in between my videos, especially researching 3D printers, because fun fact for anybody out there, when it comes to 3D printing, I've watched all kinds of review videos. Okay, great, I'm gonna go look at that one. The video is like maybe 5 minutes old, but the printer's now out of date and unavailable. You can't get the printer anymore. So, little fun fact there, and I may make a video on 3D printing as far as my research so far. I don't have a printer, but I'm researching it. Yeah, the Winchesters is enjoyable. It's a great way to get back into that supernatural verse while it exists separately. So if you want to talk about that, let me know. But wait, there's more. Hang on. I got to get back to it. Stace has another comment regarding my video, President Trump's Indictment. The main reason, I apologize in advance, I don't have my glasses, so if I squint a little bit, I apologize. The main reason I don't believe this to be political is because there was a grand jury that went over the facts of the case. I would hope that they would judge the evidence brought forth to them, not based on political standing, but if the evidence deemed it necessary to indict. I'm going to pause there and respond. Wishful thinking, I'm with you 100%. Theoretically speaking, the grand jury was not selected purposely for their socio-political views so that they could potentially secure an indictment. Theoretically, in a perfect world, this has absolutely nothing to do with political motivations. But if I look at New York City as a whole, and statistically where they're at socio-politically, it's very, very difficult for me not to think in any way, shape, or form that this is not the weaponization of the Department of Justice, that this is not a political witch hunt to derail the political campaign of an individual who is suffering from either high praise, high popularity, or low praise, low popularity. What is uniquely interesting to me is how he was once in good standing with certain people until he decided to venture into politics. Now they say all these bad things about him. I think the one thing Trump did, whether he meant to or not, whether this was what he set up to do, was he was able to expose hypocrisy in the media, hypocrisy in politics, and that I admired. Granted, I didn't exactly admire how he conducted himself as a president. In all honesty, I believe he would be a fantastic advisor to a president who was willing to listen to his advice and counsel. On that note, I'm going to flip this a little bit, and I'm going to put on my Alex Jones tinfoil hat for 1 second. A part of me thinks Donald Trump did not really want to be president, that he ran as a spoof. And as a spoof, his whole intent was to expose some of the uglier, negative side of politics. And then when his campaign just began to take off and people were like, hell yeah, we're terribly interested in a lifelong political candidate, that it was then he was like, shit, this is actually going somewhere. I really had no intentions of this going anywhere. That's my personal thoughts. I don't know how true that is. On that subject though, like my video says, I'm very concerned about the precedents this sets, because while on one hand I'm all for it, let's go after everybody. I don't care, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green Party, Tea Party, I don't care. Let's go after everybody. Let's break open the closets and look at the skeletons. Let's go. Clintons, Bushes, I don't care. Everybody. Let's break out the heavy equipment and just dig deep. However, I'm concerned at the quid pro quo, tit for tat, back and forth. And I'm not trying to be ambiguous about it. I think it creates more problems than it solves. But let me continue to see what you have. I also believe that this should be across board so that any district attorney or federal district attorney went before a grand jury to indict a person from any of the parties. I know there are two major ones, but still, all political parties should be judged the same. Okay. And had the evidence backing up the charges against the individual persons, etc., that anyone from any of the parties would be indicted. Yet you and I agree there. You and I, yeah. And I think as just regular people, that's one that's easy to get behind. My only concern, though, is in weaponizing the Department of Justice, in weaponizing the law against political opponents and political dissidents, that was supposed to be part of what our country was founded on, was everything that the original colonials despised about their European countries of origin is what they were trying to flee from. Now, look, we could argue all day and all night about how they may have felt about the concept of slavery as a whole. Not specifically with the evolution of African slavery, but just the practice of slavery as a whole. We could argue about how they reacted and responded to the indigenous people, where I would venture to say, if we dig a little bit deeper, we would eventually find that once business and politics began to partner up with one another, that's when we saw the Western expansion and the treatment of natives. And let's not forget about how the Chinese were treated, but I digress. That's a whole other rabbit hole. From some of what I understand, and again, I have to always check myself with my sources, because as you imagine, I get my information from socio-political commentators that I tend to identify more with and agree with. You know, whether it's Tim Pool, Patrick Bet-David, Steven Crowder. I say Steven Crowder like that because I know in some cases he's a bit extreme for me, but I digress. My limited understanding is that Donald Trump is being brought up on like ridiculous charges. Like, the charges he's being brought up on don't necessarily warrant the level of fanfare and media coverage that it's getting, and that it also sets a dangerous precedent because, you know, it's like going after a political dissident for an overdue library book and the penalties associated with that. But I digress. The other problem I have with this is the precedence that it sets, where if you don't like somebody, then these are some of the actions you can take. And I don't mean like their own actions have necessitated something. I mean, like, yeah, I just don't like that person. You know, like if all of a sudden, Stace, I decided that I didn't like you, and I just dug as deep as I could into your closet, and I found something, anything, the dumbest thing. You know, just like, oh, an unpaid parking ticket, aha, gotcha. And I created this mountain out of what essentially is a molehill. And I hope I'm making sense. I feel like you're understanding what I'm putting down. All right, where did I leave off? That anyone, okay. Now, guilt or innocence will be judged at a later date by either a jury of the person's peers or by bench judge. Then you have the appeal system, etc. So while this indictment is a precedent, it will still be a while before we see anything come of it. You know, that's interesting you mentioned that, because what actually would be a jury of Donald Trump's peers? I mean, if you put it in that context, and whether you want to dissect it to socioeconomic status or what would be Donald Trump's peers? Because, I mean, I can't necessarily say that I would be on his peer level. And then, as we all know, and I think art has an aptitude for imitating life and vice versa, we know that in the jury selection process, obviously the prosecutors would want to create a jury more favorable to them, just like the defendant would want to create a jury more favorable to them versus a completely and utterly neutral jury. I don't know. I think it's a very dangerous precedence. I don't know. I feel like I've said my piece to the point where now I'm just repeating myself, but I'd love to hear from you and anybody else that may see this, for that matter. With that in mind, I've got about maybe 2 minutes left. So on the more nerdier front, I'm starting to do a deep dive into 3D printing, due to the ease of which, or I'm assuming the ease of which, but more specifically the detail I can achieve for doing Mandalorian cosplay and potential future cosplays. Actually, when I'm done with this video, I'm going to go talk to my business partner and see what my business partner has to say about it. Also, my wife and I were watching Battlestar Galactica, the remake. To a degree, it was getting repetitive, and I don't know why. I wouldn't say we lost interest. It wasn't maintaining the spark. So we rewatched True Blood. I gotta say, there was just something about True Blood that was just so on point, where all the different topics discussed, you know, whether subtly or not, it felt identifiable for so many of us, at least so many of us that don't partake in certain extreme views. All right? I mean, my God, Nelson Ellis, God rest his soul, pardon the expression, you know I'm not a very church-going person. I mean, the character of Lafayette was just phenomenal. The way that so many things were portrayed in True Blood, and it maintained a spark for all 7 seasons that we rewatched. And now, I guess due in part to some of the people that are showing up at GalaxyCon in Raleigh, my wife and I are watching Once Upon a Time. She claims she made it all the way to season 3, as in through season 3. We are currently on season 3 right now. After that, I'm not sure if we'll go back to Battlestar Galactica, or normally what we like to do with our time is once we know the guest list, we try to familiarize ourselves with their content or the most popular form of their content. So if we do a meet and greet or if we go to a panel, we can participate. The only difficulty I see right now is Stephen Amell is going to be there, and his most recent content is Heels. I don't believe we have access to the streaming network that Heels is on, since it's 100% streaming. But maybe we will before the time comes. I mean, we've still got until the end of June. So fingers crossed, and fingers crossed that I'll get this 3D print thing going. So here's the deal, everybody. Stace, you already know, so I apologize for the repetition. For anybody else, if you leave a comment, I promise, case in point, I will read, react, and respond. And if you do, that's really all I care about. I don't care about the likes or the subscriptions or whatever the case may be. I just want to create conversations, whether socio-politically, whether nerdy, you know, for us, the little people who maybe can't afford to go beyond the paywall and be heard by some of the bigger people. So with that in mind, if you leave a comment, I'd appreciate it. You're awesome. Till next time, please stay safe out there.